Good evening. Today's lecture today's lecture is about the gross domestic product and women. The role of women in the production. What is this GDP? How is it measured? What role is played by women in the GDP? Women outside the GDP? What are the statistics we have with us? What happens if we don't include women in the production process? Why should we include more of women on par with men in the production process? The social psychological implications for happiness. Let's get to see that. We need to measure growth. We need to measure economic growth. As it begins, we work on nature to produce goods and services, to satisfy our needs, and we produce more than what we need. We produce less than what we need. We means communities, nations, and we trade. We used to barter. Now there is the universal medium of money. Barter is reducing in its value. All that is okay. So basically what? We produce goods and services. Tomatoes, potatoes, cars, aeroplanes, banks, transport, education, health services. We produce them for market. The entire GDP is about market. If you don't produce for market, it's not a part of the GDP. If I take care of my children, if they want to know about inflation, if I teach them inflation, that's not a part of the GDP. But when I go to a university and give a lecture, they pay me a little bit of money for that, and that's a part of the GDP. I give an interview to CNBC, that's a part of the GDP. But the same conversation I have with my friends and family about the same topic, which is GDP, that's not a part of the GDP. So get the difference clearly. What we produce for the market is a part of the GDP. What's not meant for the market is not a part of the GDP. Now, going to the contribution of women to economy, their participation in the formal economy, informal economy, agriculture, self-owned partnership, proprietorship, enterprises, micro enterprises, papads and pickles and whatnot, small handicrafts. That's, you have them in the boardroom also, you have them in the Prime Minister's office also, but that is a, negligible component of the population of women. Essentially, the labor force participation rate, as you would call it, 20% of the women looking for work are finding work. In other words, if there are 100 eligible women are there, of them 20 are either employed or looking for work. 80% of the women in the productive age of 15 to 64 are neither employed nor looking for work. What do you mean? So GDP is for the market. 20% of the women are either working or looking for work. 80 are at home, not even looking for work. Are they not working? Of course they are working. You and I work in the office for 9 hours a day. They work for 15 hours a day at home. But that's not for market. That's for, 100 odd things at home. What you call? Care economy. Care. Domestic care. Taking care of children. Educating them. Cooking. Serving. Washing. Drying. Ironing. Taking kids to the hospital for health. Taking care of old people. Giving them food. Giving them medicine. Going around for shopping, going to fetch some fuel wood, for cooking at home, for lighting at home, etc., etc., etc. One of the fundamental limitations of the concept of GDP is that it does not include that part of the human labor which is not meant for the market. None of this is meant for the market. None of what they do at home. I'm not saying men don't do it. We'll come to that. But far less of it is done by men because they have work outside and therefore they may not be able to participate at home. This historical division of labor, whatever be the reasons why it came up, it has been identified with patriarchal domination of the economy. You can show me an odd person in, some companies globally headed by women, but the division of labor, essentially, as it stands today, is a function of the patriarchal submission of women. We'll come to that. So a lot of work that women do is not counted as a part of the GDP because all that is done at home and, let's say, taking care of children. If she becomes an ayah, goes to some other home and takes care of children of that home, then what she does is monetized and becomes a part of the GDP. So she takes care of little kids at home. What's the price of it? She washes, she cooks. What is the price of it? If you put a price tag to what she does, for example, cooking, you call that shadow price. Because a lady, that's a mother, a daughter, whoever, a lady at home, cooking is not meant for the market. Unless she has a cloud kitchen, she cooks extra, and that extra she sells through Uber Eats, etc. So there is some monetization. That's only of late in the digital economy, not before. So shadow price is what? The price that you fix to activities which are not for monetary purposes. So put together all the shadow prices of what the women do across the planet, or talk of India, what women do in terms of productive activity at home, put all that together. What's the price of it? It is estimated at around, say, 1/3 of the GDP. If the GDP is 100, what women do at home is about, say, 33. And so, if you add value to that, monetary value, market value through the shadow prices, then 133 is your GDP. But the 33%, it may vary across the countries. Developed, developing, least developed, and so on. But yeah, let's average that at around 33, 1/3 of the GDP. And that's never counted. If your GDP is 100, that's exclusive of the contribution of women for their work at home. There are suggestions that you should monetize that. We'll come to that later. So there is GDP, what we produce for the market, the wages we receive, the profit we make, the rent we earn, the interest we earn. That's the other side, the income part of the GDP. Consumption, investment, output, income, expenditure, three methods of computing the value of the GDP. All of them are alike. Exclude the work done at home across the world. Across the world. If India adds the work of women at home, other countries don't add, then the challenge of comparability. But we can always give two figures. One figure is as the world does it. Another as we get the figure from adding the value of what women do at home. Why? We'll come back to that. So you measure growth for a variety of reasons. We know that. Why do you measure growth? You measure because we need to know where we are, what we are producing, what we are not producing, how many people we are employing, how many people are still looking for jobs and not employed, how many are underemployed, disguised unemployment, men, women, primary, secondary, tertiary sectors. On that depends your tax calculation, your expenditure for security, investment, welfare, the entire budget and well-being starts with GDP. I'm not saying it ends with GDP, but it starts with GDP. But we all know, okay, GDP, GNP, whatever the technical differences, they don't come into the picture right now. Now, GDP is limited. I already told you GDP as a concept. GDP as a concept is limited. How? It's limited because first major monumental limitation is it doesn't capture the value of the work that the women do at home. That is women work. Another major limitation is, of course, a lot of illegal economy, which is economy which creates employment, that drives the economy, but still it is not captured because records don't have it. So illegal economy. These are the quantitative aspects. Now you come to the quality. When you come to the quality of this metric called the GDP, it's very clear. Environmental destruction goes uncaptured. Inequality goes unrecorded. Poverty goes unseen. So these are the big aspects of the economy which have to be rectified for the sustainability and durability of economic growth, for inclusion. They are not recorded. And today our focus, of course, is women and their contribution goes unrecorded. That's the big limitation we are talking about. So because of the limitation, alternatives have come up. Human Development Index, Gender Development Index, Social Progress Indicator, Genuine Progress Indicator, Gross National Happiness, Happiness Index, whatever the alternative, Well-being Index of European Union, Quality of Life, all that. I must tell you, in all this except Gender Development Index, women don't come into play directly. They talk about social support and generosity and corruption and environmental destruction and cultural continuity and good governance and what have you. All these are talked about. But women don't come into picture directly. neither in the HDI, nor in the happiness index, nor in the well-being index. In none of them, women and their plight, their state of life, standard of living, that's not captured at all. What do? Where are they in the economic hierarchy? That's not captured. Be that as it may, but for you to have a meaningful metric of economic development, unless the role of women in it is understood, measured, the metric ceases to be comprehensive and meaningful for social progress. So there are alternatives, I told you. How did we come to know what women do? How do they spend their 24 hours? You have time use survey that was conducted in 2019 by National Statistical Office for an entire calendar year. They took a sample across the country and they collected information about various aspects. What is the nature of work that they do for men and women? Children are out, old people are out. You're talking about the crux of the economy, the chunk of the economy where you have non-children, non-old people participating. How do they spend their time? Time use survey, formal economy, informal work. What is the work that they volunteer? Paid work, unpaid work, all that. And the findings are just as you imagined. Women do lots of unpaid work. Women do many, many times more than men domestic work. Women spend far less time on their self-maintenance than men. That may startle you, but that's a fact. That the amount of time that the women spend on themselves for their maintenance is precious little compared to the amount of time that men spend. Why? It flows from 1 and 2 points I've just now mentioned. That, where do they have time? When do men get up? When do women get up? When do women go to sleep? When do men go to sleep? When are women relaxing? When are men relaxing? Time use survey, I'll show you in the graphics that'll leave you. It will not surprise you because you've known it, because you grew up in the same domestic context as everyone else in India. Time use survey, I'll show you. Now, you may ask, being a product of the patriarchal society, you may ask, why empower women? You know why you should empower women? Because we are all products of a patriarchal society where we think a lot of men are unemployed, employ them first. All this, distorted thinking takes place in our minds because it is a reflection of the patriarchal society. Why empower women? Number one, there's a talent there, there's a talent here. You're looking for talent, you're looking for skill, you're looking for productivity. You should not employ on the basis of gender. Unless you are talking about, very, very difficult work confined to men, etc. Even women are participating in combat roles in the armed forces, so segregation is no longer justified. Point number one. Point number two, if you have seen, if you empower a woman, you are empowering a family. Because women educate children, send children to school, skip a meal but educate the daughter, take them for vaccination, skill them because they know the value of earthly progress, earthly power. So they do it, and the entire generation comes up with all the multiplier consequences for economy, society, psychology, etc. Thirdly, the self-esteem of women depends upon, in this, contemporary market economy, their monetary value? Surely they would like to have financial autonomy. Surely they would like to feel independent. So for the self-worth, if it is monetized on the strength of the work that they do, it leads to greater confidence, self-respect. And fourthly, as long as the labor force participation rate of women stays around 20, which is a fall, as long as they are demonetized and they have no monetary value and their dependence is chronic and grows, then this patriarchal division will carry on, and women will be powerless. That fault line will always remain with all the vicious circular nature of it. The trap is vicious. The entire family lies there subjugated except the man who heads the family. We are seeing it every day. There is nothing dramatic that one is picturing here. So 4 important reasons why it's important to have the world flat. Men and women should have same opportunities, be it school or health or college or university or employment or participating in the political power, all this. I'm glad I'm seeing it. Education levels of women are growing. They're marrying late. They're taking up less of reproductive burden. And self-help groups are there. And women are in the Stand Up India program. They're getting loans. And, in panchayat and municipality, they have a certain carve-out, certain space meant for them. All these are great happenings that empower women. We see women being empowered also as a result. But that is precious limited. Women and demographic dividend, you're thinking about an Indian economy where young people are the predominantly popular section. And if you can tap into that gold mine, you can have a dividend. Just like, send them to school, take care of their nutrition, education, quality of education, and so on, skill them properly into artificial intelligence, robotics, life sciences, etc. And you have a demographic dividend. Can anyone, hand on heart, tell me that if women are not empowered, educated, skilled, made to participate in the formal economy, and so on, can we ever have the demographic dividend? No. There'll be more paupers, there'll be more pickles, but that's not empowerment. It is the last resort. Look at their talent, look at their intelligence, look at, the first 3-4 places in the UPSC results are women. So that is a volcano there. So, yes, demographic dividend to be tapped requires that we have a flat Indian society with women participating on par with men. And you want to have $5 trillion economy. Today, the value of the annual output is about $3.5 trillion Indian output. And if you go by purchasing power parity, 10 trillion, which is true, but from a market perspective, that is a notional number. So, you want to go for 5 trillion? Can you? Without women participating? Even if you can, because by momentum of the patriarchal system, you're running the economy, will it be stable? It'll be exclusionary. So much of leadership, so much of innovation, so much of organizational motivation, so much of equity, intangible. Remember the other day there was prelim question about intangible. Equity is tangible as well as intangible. I told you about the psychological factors. A self-confident woman can be an asset to the society as well as the economy. So you want to go for $5 trillion economy. You just might be able to do it without women also at 20-25% labor force participation rate. But remember, unless you unshackle women and bring them into the economy according to the intellectual worth of women, you won't have I'll not be very confident about a $10 trillion because you are leaving out half of the society, bulk of the half of the society. Let's get to the bottom line, brass tacks. They're not consumers if they are not employed, if they're not skilled, if they're not contributing to the GDP. They're not consumers. They have no bank balance. They're not consumers. So with 40% of the society being kept out of the active economy by leaving them as non-consumers, how far can you produce and sell? You can't. The fundamental problem with equality at a brass tack level is that it leaves a lot of people outside the economy. They're not active consumers. There's no demand. There's no investment. There's no employment. And that's a vicious trap. In other words, your $5 trillion, $5 trillion is not too much. Today in the world, pecking order, you're five. America, China, Japan, Germany, India. And overtaking Germany is not big for a country of 1.4 billion people. We are already at 3.5. Germany can be overcome. And you'll be number 4. You will overcome Japan also because Japan is very close by. If you are going to be 5, Japan will be, reachable at a very close distance. You'll overtake. But to overtake China, to match America, you need all the power of the country, social power of the country. Women make up half of that. And so 5 trillion may be without women, but anything more than that, you need to have equality, equity, and participation of women on par with men. Now, Supreme Court knows about it. And so the Supreme Court said that, for example, there's an accident. A man dies. Insurance amount is, he's an employee, he's working, he's productive. According to his skills and credentials, the accident insurance amount is fixed. What about a woman? She's not working. So the insurance money given to her, compensation is low. Supreme Court has got up to that, and Supreme Court says that you also give her more money. In fact, the Supreme Court expressed the opinion that we should monetize the value of the contribution of women at home. Now, what do you do after monetization? Will you ask the husband to give her some money monthly? What will she do with that? What will be the impact on the marital balance? We have to find out. Everything by way of progress unsettles. But these are the labor pains of beautiful children. So, will the government give by way of a universal basic income, direct benefit transfer through the JAM? How will that be settled? Because once you tell her contribution is 1/3 of the GDP, after that, if you don't compensate her for what she is not being given for the work that she does, then it'll be a double whammy. You're hitting her twice. Non-payment and telling her this is your value, but stay content with receiving no compensation. That's a double whammy. So these are the challenges for public policy. And we need to wake up sooner than later. Otherwise, we would have missed the dividend bus. Now let's see. First things first. Why should we measure economic growth? We need to do so, as I told you, because for everything that is of value to us at a micro and a macro level, be it my employment, be it my food security, be it the government's tax resources, what have you. For all this, we need to know where we are, where we need to go, And how should we proceed to our goal? With the advice by economists and others, public policy makers, civil servants, civil society, we should go where we have to go. For that, we need to know where we are. For that, way back, 100 years back, Kuznets is the person who, Simon Kuznets, is the person who was consulted by Roosevelt. Sir, you tell us about what to do to come out of the depression. Then Simon Kuznets called Keynes, means made contact. Together they created a concept called the GNP, GDP and all that, with the intention that we need to measure economic growth to be able to manage economic growth as we see fit. That's how 100 years back, the concept of GDP came out. Now, GDP, GNP, that becomes per capita. Is you divide the GDP by the median population, you get the per capita. That's very simple. We all know. I was telling you about the substitutes for the concept of GDP because it is too quantitative and also it has certain other limitations that I told you. So many, I told you all these things. Inequality adjusted HDI. Social progress, genuine progress, GNH of Bhutan, green GDP, all these items. Now, time use survey. How are men and women using their time? 24 hours they have in a day. Let's find out across 1 year, 2019, National Sample Survey Office, NSSO, which has become a part of the NSO. They went around collecting data and the findings are like this. Why do you want to find out? Survey, important source of information, time spent, how are women spending, men spending. They're spending unproductively, we can do something about it. Spending productively but not monetized, we can do something about it. So it gives, and are they having any leisure? Or are they just, working on and on like robots? Quality of life means you must have leisure. Article 43, which is the DPSP, promises you leisure. And so, let's find out if they have any leisure. Like these days, we are concentrating on museums. Let's concentrate. Every district, every mandal should have a cultural center where people who paint and dance and sing or, put up plays, let them go there. That's how your inner potential for art and culture surfaces. Life will be far more meaningful. That's exactly what Stiglitz Commission on Quality of Life in 2009 recommended. There should be leisure as a part of our social life. Self-care. So time use survey, of course, they didn't go to some villages in Andaman because they were unreachable and conducted from 1st of Jan till December of 2001. Findings. The people above 6 years and above, children are out. Children and older people, they're out. Why? Because their contribution is not there for the economy. Very low paid work participation rates of women. Women, to begin with, they are into a bonded labor at home, patriarchal. And because of that, they can't go out to work. And so it's a double jeopardy. You are in domestic work, which is unpaid. That diminishes your social strength. And on top of that, you can't go out and work. That further diminishes you. So you are doubly disadvantaged because of being confined to domestic work. If you love it, that will be wonderful. See, if women want to bring up their children, So they deliberately opted out. That is something else. But you convert a necessity into a virtue. That's something else. So we need to be graded in our thinking, differentiated and nuanced in our thinking as to why women are stuck at home. Very low paid work, 15 to 59. That's one calculation. 64 is another calculation. Only 20% are in paid work. That's labor force participation rate. Working or looking for work. 20%, 20.6. And what's it for men? 70% of men. Paid work participation by men is 70. Here, 20. Together, less than 50. Even in America, it will be about 60, 63. But in India, women spend 6.5 hours every day unpaid. 6.5. And in urban areas, more than 6 hours. Difference is little. Women and men unpaid. Women are forced to more than a quarter of every 24 hours. And men only 5%. 25% of the day by women in unpaid. 5% of the day by men in unpaid. That means 5 and 25, 5 times. Residual activities. Learning, education, socializing, culture, going to bhajan, etc. and self-care and maintenance. They're all residual activities. Men have far more time for residual activities than women. Greater proportion of the daily time. Men getting a significantly greater proportion for residual activities. Residual activities are these. I told you, cooking, washing, cleaning, educating kids, and taking care of old people. All that is the mainstay. Residual is education, socializing, going to friends and relatives and chit-chat once in a while. Community participation, dance or drama, religion, temple, bhajan. Culture, leisure, go for a film. Even at home, you watch a film, Netflix and Amazon. Mass media, reading newspaper is a luxury. Sports, etc. So, residual activities. Tomorrow, this can come in the preliminary. What are the residual activities as categorized by National Sample Survey Office in their time use service? It's a wonderful question. Strong gender dimension to time use and time poverty. I want to study. Where is time? Time poverty. Get up at 5. Make roti for kids going to school. Put their books in the bag. Take them to the bus or the auto. Come back. Husband is waiting for a second round of chai. All this having done, you're tired. Cognitively, you are under pressure. Cognitive is something else, or at least not to be distracted now. Your time poverty. Poverty is what? Poverty is not having enough. That is poverty. So you don't have enough time? That is time poverty. And men can read the newspaper, magazine, go for a film, have a party. For all that, they got plentiful time. And women, time poverty. This is time poverty. And when you don't have time, you're working all the time, that gives you cognitive poverty. Your mind, your cerebral resources are eaten up by the stress and fatigue, which is what you find in the health profile of women. Now, this is a question I've come across in the Wall Street Journal. Do women produce more GDP than men? If you don't count, this is what they produce. If you count what they do at home and put the price tag to that, add that to days, you have days. 56% of the GDP is by women. So women produce, if you put value to what they do at home, which is unpaid work, and then add to what they produce in the formal economy. Formal means, economy. Then Here, if you don't count the domestic work, men are producing a bit more. Here, if you are counting what they produce at home, what they do at home, women are producing 56% of the GDP, and still they are buckling under in the system, and it requires to be addressed. Otherwise, sooner or later, it will explode. Explode doesn't mean that it will come out as violence. Call it implode. The health they don't enjoy, the education that they are denied. All this makes a society sicker. We are celebrating March 8 as a International Women's Day. Should we not celebrate every month a certain day as Women's Day so that we are reminded about the inequality, gender inequality, etc.? That's one suggestion. Remember one thing, if you got this, it will be wonderful. Hiroshima, G7, they had T7, Thinker 7. Think 7, they have T7. Hiroshima, they clearly said GDP as an economic metric does not capture the well-being and the lack of equity in the society. We need superior measurement concepts. And in Bhopal earlier this year, the T20, Think 20 of the G20 met, they also said we need to have a concept other than the GDP. GDP is okay, simple and all that, but simplistic also. We need to have a concept which is sustainable environment angle and also socially equitable. That is, it gives men adequate scope to measure contribution of women. Encourage the model of development led by women. This is going to come in the prelim and the main. Next prelim this May. So spare a thought for this. Think 7 and Think 20. They talked about a concept other than the GDP for measuring the value of social development, gender-based growth and all. So, since 91, how has it been for women in India? We've done a lot. Fertility levels are dropping, reproductive span is dropping, you're giving them electricity, stove and cylinder, all that. Swachh Bharat, they don't have to, all the diseases are because of lack of good sanitation. And when there is disorder, it's women who have to take the kid to the hospital. So when you have Swachh Bharat, cooking gas, without all the chula, then all this will help women get some relief. And so we can count all this. But the labor force participation rate in India leaves a lot to be desired. From 43%, we fell to 23%. That was in 1780. Today, if you count, 21%, which is very bad. Consequences are this patriarchal stranglehold will continue and get worse. Demographic dividend, I have already explained to you. 5 trillion USD, you may get there without women, but 10 is impossible. 10 is neither desirable nor possible. Why we need to empower women? I told you. I gave you 4 grounds. Equality, number 1. Dipping into the talent pool, number 2. Help women and help a whole family, number 3. Otherwise, a vicious circle of the patriarchal society will continue, and that's a great historic loss of our human resource. Supreme Court, I told you, accident victims, men are paid more, women are paid less, and Supreme Court said you also pay them more. So if you leave them uneducated, unskilled, and out of paid work, this is another consequence, that they're paid less. Paid means they are paid means, whoever belongs to them is paid far less for the women who die in an accident as insurance compensation. So educate them, and that will uplift the society. That's where we stand at the end of our discussion today. Shoot your questions whenever you can, wherever you can. We'll be there to answer that. I wish you all the best.